They called me trash. Not in whispers, not behind closed doors, but at a family dinner table glowing with candles and fake smiles. My parents, the people who were supposed to teach me love, looked me in the eyes and said, "You're the most trashy daughter we have." The words dropped like silverware in a quiet room, sharp and metallic, cutting through whatever fragile peace I had left. For a moment, no one moved. Even the air seemed to hold its breath, afraid to be caught on either side of the wound. The air shifted instantly. My mother gasped sharp enough to snap heads toward her. My father's hand froze around his glass condensation dripping onto his cuff. My sister's lips twitched, not sure whether to panic or laugh. But me, I felt calm. For once I wasn't trembling. It was like standing on the shore watching the waves that once drowned me finally retreat. My father tried again, his voice soft, careful warning. "You're overreacting." I shook my head. "No, I'm just done reacting." The words landed like a verdict. Around me, the chandelier light bounced off polished silverware. Roses in the centerpiece wilted slightly under the weight of sour water, and not a single person spoke up for me. Not one. That was the lesson, wasn't it? They wanted my silence when they insulted me, my money when they struggled, my absence when they celebrated. My mother's eyes cut sharp as glass. "You wouldn't let your own family suffer." I tilted my head, let her words hang, and answered softly, "You already decided I wasn't family." The words cracked something in the room. The weight of unspoken truths settled, pressing the table down inch by inch. My chair scraped back farther, my body rising taller than I'd ever allowed myself to be in that house. My voice didn't shout, but it carried. "You called me trash. Trash doesn't fund you. Trash doesn't save you. Trash walks out." And then I turned, each step echoing like a gavel striking down on years of injustice. Behind me, I heard the shuffle of chairs, the low murmur of relatives trying to contain what had already broken. No apologies, no defense, just fear. Fear of what my silence would now cost them. At the doorway, my sister's voice cracked. "Zara, wait." I paused, turned just enough to meet her eyes. She wanted me to fix it, to be the bridge again, the patch that made everything look whole. My throat tightened, but my words came steady. "I can't, not this time." I stood slowly, my chair scraping against the floor, with a sound that felt like a blade across tile. I looked at the faces around me. My mother's lips rounded into a perfect O of fake surprise. My father's jaw tight, like he was chewing a word he refused to swallow in public. My sister twirling a ribbon on the gift table, as though my pain were just part of the decor. And then I spoke. My voice didn't shake, though every part of me wanted to scream. "Stop calling me when you need money." And I stepped into the night. The night air outside rushed against my face, cool and liberating, as if the sky itself had been waiting to swallow me whole. For a moment, I stood there on the front steps, staring at the house I had once called home. The golden light from inside spilled out of the windows, but it looked artificial now, like a stage set for a play that had already ended. The laughter, the birthdays, the dinners, the small rituals that once felt like belonging, I could see through them all. It was never belonging. It was leverage. And I had finally stopped being their currency. My heels clicked against the marble walkway, each sound steadier than my heartbeat. My car sat at the end of the driveway, quiet, ready like an ally who had been waiting for me all along. I opened the door, slid into the driver's seat, and closed it with a finality that made my chest ache. I rested my hands on the wheel and let myself breathe. For the first time all night, I inhaled fully, deeply, as if years of suffocating under their expectations had finally loosened their grip. The screen of my phone lit up again. Dad's name glared across it like a warning. I let it ring. Another call, then another. Finally, a voicemail. I played it on speaker, the darkness inside my car holding his voice like a courtroom. "Zara, don't do this. You know they depend on you. You know we depend on you. If you walk away, what happens to us? What happens to us?" The hypocrisy dripped from every word. He had never once asked what happened to me. Not after the nights I skipped dinner just to cover their bills. Not when I turned down jobs because they needed me close. Not when I swallowed every insult they threw at me in front of relatives. Their survival had always been my responsibility. My survival had never been theirs. I parked under the broken glow of a street lamp, the night thick with the scent of wet asphalt and gasoline. My reflection in the windshield stared back at me, tired, bruised, but not broken. I opened my notes app and began to write. Not to them, not for them, for me. A ledger of truths instead of debts. They called me trash. They called me selfish. They called me unworthy. But when bills stacked high, when cupboards ran empty, when the lights threatened to go out, it was my so-called trash hands that kept them alive. My fingers trembled as I typed the final line, I am not trash. I am the reason they've survived this long, and they will feel my absence like hunger. The words didn't heal me, not completely, but they stitched the wound enough to keep me upright. By morning, the storm broke. My phone buzzed with messages like frantic knocks on a locked door. Mom, we need you back. Bills are due. Dad, don't make a scene. Just fix this. My sister, they're panicking. Please, just send something. I read each one in silence, my coffee growing cold in a chipped mug at a small cafe table. Around me, strangers laughed, read newspapers, tapped on laptops. None of them knew me, but I felt freer among them than I ever had at my family's table. I scrolled through years of receipts, again rent transfers, hospital fees, emergency cash, the invisible lifelines I had sent. Every proof of my love twisted into proof of their entitlement. The silence that followed was heavier than any insult. My words landed like a stone in water ripples, spreading across every stunned face. The music playing in the background felt cruel in its cheerfulness, mocking me with every upbeat note. I could hear the hum of the refrigerator, the clink of a cousin's bracelet, even the catch in my sister's throat, as she whispered, "You didn't have to say it like that." Not one of their messages said sorry. Not one admitted the cruelty of last night. They didn't want me. They wanted my wallet. Another buzz, this time from my sister. "Just come back, we'll smooth it over." Smooth it over, like pressing a napkin against a spill and pretending the stain wasn't already soaked deep into the fabric. I typed slowly, each word cutting a cord between us. "I'm not smoothing anything. I'm done being your cover story." I hit send. The word delivered glowed final and undeniable. My chest hurt, but not from breaking. It was the ache of release. Later that week, whispers began to seep through the cracks of our extended family. A cousin posted online about the electricity being cut at my parents' house. Another mentioned how Dad had borrowed money from him, something he never would have done if my transfers were still flowing. Their respectable image, the illusion they had worked so hard to polish, was already starting to crumble without me propping it up. Then came the message that made me laugh out loud, bitter and unstoppable. An unknown number. "If you don't send it, Dad says we'll tell everyone how ungrateful you are." Ungrateful. That was their final weapon. As if my silence, my sacrifice, my entire life spent keeping them afloat could be erased with a single word. They wanted to paint me as the villain, but I was done holding their picture frame. I set my phone face down on the cafe table. The screen went black, and in that blackness, I saw only one truth. They had already lost the best part of me, and I wasn't going back. The days that followed felt strangely quiet, like stepping into a new world where every sound had space to breathe. My apartment was bare white walls, a fridge that hummed louder than it should, but everything inside it was mine. No guilt attached, no strings. For once, I wasn't living inside the shadow of someone else's needs. But the quiet didn't last long. On Sunday morning, my phone lit up with a group chat notification. My entire extended family had been added, uncles, aunts, cousins, even people I hadn't spoken to in years. And there it was glaring on my screen, a message from Dad. "Zara has abandoned us. She refuses to help her own parents. We raised her, and this is how she repays us." Like that. As if tone were the crime, not the history. As if my delivery was harsher than the years of humiliation, the late-night calls for help, the sacrifices that had hollowed me out. I looked at the half-eaten slice of cake in front of me, the fork stabbed upright like a flag planted in conquered territory, and realized I was done being conquered. For a moment, I just stared. My pulse slowed. Then, with hands that didn't shake, I opened my files. Screenshots of transfers, midnight texts begging for money receipts stacked year after year, proof that the daughter they called Trash had been their lifeline all along. With one steady breath, I dropped every single file into the chat. Dozens of images flashed across the screen in sequence, irrefutable, undeniable, each one a nail in the coffin of their story. The silence that followed was deafening. Not a single insult, not a single defense, just the heavy weight of truth pressing down on them all. Finally, a cousin, one of Dad's favorites, typed back, "Zara, you've been carrying them all this time." I didn't reply. I didn't need to. The evidence spoke louder than I ever could. Minutes later, my sister called. Her voice shook, broken and small. "They're humiliated. Everyone knows now. What did you do?" I almost pitied her, but my voice was steady, almost kind. "I just stopped hiding their trash. I let it sit in the light." She cried quietly on the other end, but I felt nothing. Not guilt, not triumph, just peace. Because the truth wasn't a weapon, it was a mirror, and they were finally forced to look at their own reflection. That evening, as the sun bled orange into the horizon, I sat by my window sipping tea in silence. No buzzing phone, no pleading messages, no weight on my shoulders. Just me. For the first time in my life, I wasn't their scapegoat, their safety net, their daughter to shame when it suited them and use when it didn't. But the story wasn't finished yet. Because family like mine doesn't surrender quietly. By midweek, whispers turned to storms. My mother's voice on voicemail cracked sharp, brittle. "Everyone's asking questions. Your aunt saw the receipts. Do you want people to know you've been paying for us all this time? Do you want the shame on us or on you?" For the first time, I heard it clearly. It wasn't control she feared losing. It was reputation. Without me, the illusion shattered. The respectable family everyone admired was nothing but a house built on my silence. I typed a single reply and sent it to my sister, knowing it would echo through the house like thunder. "I'm not ruining you. I'm just done saving you." Because the truth was written everywhere, even in my phone resting on the table. Screenshots of transfers receipts at midnight, emergencies patched together by my hands, the hands they had just called trash. For years I had stayed late to wash dishes, sent rent when the business stumbled, covered hospital bills and grocery shortages without ever demanding thanks. All I got in return were commands: stand straighter, talk softer, never remind anyone what I had done. My usefulness was their expectation, not their gratitude. The word delivered glowed final, and I knew in that moment the balance had tipped. For once I wasn't the desperate one. They were. And yet, deep in my chest, I felt the ache of something larger. Years of being conditioned to carry them didn't vanish overnight. Every choice to walk away came with the ghost of guilt trailing behind it. But guilt was a chain, and I was learning to live without shackles. That week I walked past the old family home, the curtains drawn, the porch light off even before midnight. For years that house had looked invincible, a monument to pride. Now it looked fragile, one storm away from collapsing. I stood across the street, hands tucked in my coat, watching the place where I had grown up. Memories flickered in my mind like old film reels running down those hallways with scraped knees, Mom's bracelets clinking as she reached for me, Dad's laughter booming at the dinner table. How quickly those echoes had turned into debts, into guilt, dressed up as love. I whispered into the cold night words only for me. "They'll miss me more in silence than they ever valued me in noise." And then I walked away. The call came a week later, long after I thought they would finally stop trying. It was Mom this time, her voice thin and trembling, as if the air around her words might shatter if she spoke too loud. "Zara, please, we can't keep up anymore. The bills, the house, everything, it's falling apart." I sat at my kitchen table, the morning light spilling across a stack of books I had finally bought for myself instead of anyone else. My tea was still steaming, and in the silence after her words, I realized something she wasn't asking because she cared about me. She was asking because she was afraid. Afraid of a life where I no longer filled the gaps. "Do you hear yourself?" I asked quietly, my voice steady. "You called me trash. You told me I was the shame of the family. And now you want me to save it again? Her silence stretched long. Then softly she said, "We didn't mean it." My father tried to recover the room with his polished calm, smoothing his napkin like a diplomat. "There's no reason to embarrass us," he said. That was the word he used when he meant me. Embarrassment. As if my refusal to remain silent was the real shame, not the way they had gutted me in public. But words like that don't come undone. They burrow, they scar, they twist into the bones of your memory until they feel like marrow. For years I had lived under those words, built my entire sense of worth around trying to disprove them. And in that moment, I realized I didn't need to disprove anything. I ended the call without another word. News spread quickly after that. They couldn't keep their crumbling house quiet anymore. Neighbors whispered, relatives gossiped, and for once I didn't feel the urge to rush in and protect them. They had thrown me into the fire for years now. They could stand in the smoke of their own making. Still, there were moments I wrestled with guilt. At night, lying awake, I wondered if I was cruel, if walking away made me heartless. But then I'd remember the dinner table, the sting of their words echoing in front of every relative. "You're the most trashy daughter we have. No apology, no remorse, just entitlement." That memory steadied me when guilt threatened to drag me back. Weeks turned into months. My sister texted once, short and sharp, "You've ruined everything. I hope you're happy." I typed, deleted, retyped, then finally sent no. I didn't ruin it. I just stopped cleaning it up. And with that, I blocked her number. The strange thing about walking away from toxicity is how empty it feels at first. Like standing in a quiet room after years of chaos, you almost crave the noise you swore you hated. But slowly, the quiet becomes music. I started painting again, something I had abandoned years ago. I took walks at sunrise. I saved money not for emergencies that weren't mine, but for dreams I had buried deep. Then one afternoon, an aunt reached out. Her message was simple: "I saw the files you shared. You don't need to explain yourself to anyone. I'm proud of you." I cried reading those words. Not because they healed everything, but because they reminded me that truth has witnesses. That my silence had never been weakness, it had been survival. And my voice now was not revenge, it was release. I kept my voice low, steady, almost gentle. "The way you speak to a skittish animal. I'm not trying to embarrass anyone. I'm just retiring from being useful only when it hurts." The last time I saw my parents, it wasn't at a family dinner or a reunion. It was at the grocery store. They looked smaller somehow, like life had folded them inward. Mom avoided my eyes. Dad cleared his throat like he wanted to speak but couldn't find the words. I walked past them with my head high, my basket light, my steps steady. They had called me trash. But walking away, I realized something they never would: trash doesn't walk back into the fire that tried to consume it. Trash doesn't rebuild itself into something stronger. Trash doesn't learn to love again freely without chains. But I did. And that was my revenge. Not shouting, not proving, simply living in a way that they could no longer touch. If you've ever been cast aside, if you've ever been told you were worthless by the very people who should have loved you most, let my story be your reminder: you are not their words. You are your survival. You are your rebuilding. You are your freedom. So here I am telling you this, not with anger, but with hope. Because healing is possible. Because walking away is sometimes the bravest thing you'll ever do. If my story touched you, if you felt even a flicker of recognition in my journey, I ask you, like this video. Share it so others might find the strength they need. Subscribe for more stories that give voice to what so many of us hide, and leave me a comment below. Tell me, what was the moment you realized you had to choose yourself? Because that moment, that choice, is where the story of freedom begins. The silence moved like a storm cloud settling over the table. Uncles checked their watches that weren't late. Aunts stared hard into their teacups. Cousins shifted in their chairs, restless but unwilling to move. No one defended me. Not one word of comfort, not even from the sister who once held my hand crossing the street. I let the moment stretch. I let them sit in the discomfort of my truth. Then slowly, I placed my palm over my phone, opened the banking app, and hovered my thumb over the glowing button. Pause transfers. Such a small phrase for what it meant. Years of swallowing insults just to send money anyway. Years of carrying them when they stumbled and letting them call me selfish for asking nothing back. I clicked it.